Ladies and gentlemen, coming to you from the Colonial Dungeon, this is the Court Martial Podcast! Introducing your host for this evening, he has a bald spot on the top of his head, and he weighs in tonight at a number you don't need to know. He is the Colonial Loudmouth, Sean McCord! And welcome to another Court Martial Podcast. I am, as always, your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty, and today, as advertised, we have a special guest here from the Totally Awesome Podcast. He has a podcast, he does a gaming channel, he has a pro wrestling network, he does a little bit of it all, he does wrestling reviews, he is the man of 1,000 YouTube, he is a connoisseur, a renaissance man, if you will, of the YouTube game. JoshAgeddon, welcome back to the show.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? And during the coronavirus, I bought 4 Monster Energy drinks yesterday, and I'm down to 1, so I'm gonna die soon. So, yeah, thanks for having me. It might be my last time.
At least you didn't have them all in the course of, like, one day, because I know people who are, like, addicted to Monsters.
My limit is, like, 2 a day, but I know people who drink, like, 4 a day, and I'm like, how are you still alive?
There was this guy I used to work with who would have, like, 3 Monsters with him, and then he would take 2 5-hour energies to start the morning.
Oh, God.
That dude, I have no idea. That was like 3 years ago. I have no idea the whereabouts of this man, or whether he's even alive, or what the deal is. But, weird cat.
One of my ex-girlfriends, it has severe ADHD, and she messaged me the other day that she had a whole Red Bull, and I was like, oh, God, what have you done?
Dear Lord.
And 10 minutes later, I was bombarded with a bunch of TikToks.
TikToks. Well, I guess better TikToks than Tic Tacs, because Tic Tacs could actually hurt. Your breath would be surprisingly fresh, though. But in any event, we have a lot to talk about today. And the first thing is we're just going to probe a little bit, because I want to talk about our wrestling taste, because over the years, you and I have definitely had differences of opinion, for better or worse. Over what we like and what we don't like. So I want you to just run down for us, like, certain things you like in pro wrestling and certain things you don't like in pro wrestling when it looks for your, like, ideal match.
Well, for one, I prefer long matches with, like, my favorite match of all time is the Iron Man match between Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle on SmackDown in 2003.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Absolutely fantastic match. Like, I love stuff like Shawn and Bret the Iron. I'm a big fan of Iron Man matches.
When they're done right, they're good.
When they're done right, not when Charlotte and Sasha Banks, or when the crowd hijacks Seth Rollins and Dolph Ziggler. That match pissed me off so much.
I forgot about both of those matches. I wonder why.
They're insanely forgettable. But yeah, I love long matches. I like near falls to a degree, but like I remember getting into a lot of arguments because I hate the John Cena U.S. Open Challenge thing. One of my grievances was I don't see the point of doing finisher kickouts on Raw every week,
right?
Because when you're at the pay-per-view, you know immediately that they're going to kick out of finishers.
Yeah.
So it drains the tension. Like, doing finisher kickouts on pay-per-view is one thing. But on TV, every week, that's too much.
Well, even still in some matches, like, I remember with, I think it was, 2017 Royal Rumble that was Cena AJ? Mm-hmm. I think. That match, I love that match, but the one thing that took me out of it is that there was like 7 or 8 different false finishes. It was just like, it was 10,000. I almost called it an FU because that was because ruthless aggression. But there was like 4 AAs and 4 Styles clashes, and it was just a bombardment.
I felt the same way about their SummerSlam match that everyone adores. And I don't mind finisher kickouts, but sometimes it can get ridiculous, and that's the only thing about a match. Like, one of my least favorite matches of all time is The Rock versus Cena 2 at WrestleMania 29.
Oh, we're going to talk about that. Don't you worry. That's coming up.
All that match was.
Yeah, it was. There was no need to have that match. It won, and there was even less need to make a title involved in that match.
Well, which is crazy because I watched their WrestleMania 28 match, the Once in a Lifetime. That match is actually pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's great. That match is fantastic.
And I will say, I was once notorious for my hatred of John Cena.
I can attest to this.
Yeah, that has very much calmed down over the past couple of years, mostly because my opinions of wrestling have generally calmed down over the past couple of years, because I guess...
I hear you.
Mark this on your calendars. The day Joshua grew up a little bit.
It happens to all of us, though, because I know that I was very similar when I was...
later than others.
When I was that age, back when we first met 7 years ago or whatever it was, even then I had a much different form of opinion than I do now. It's just you mature with the wrestling that you get presented, for better or worse. It's
and one thing that I hate in wrestling that you can also attest to that is whenever there's like a fad or a trend that just pops up out of nowhere and then all of a sudden it's over like crazy, like the Rusev Day thing that I still despise, but it's kind of died over the past couple of years because, well, it's Rusev.
That was a cash cow, though, man. That was making Rusev tons of merch sales. Mm-hmm. I mean, I understand. I it popped out of nowhere, and I could see how it was annoying. But, man, I really feel like they dropped the ball with that one. Like, they could have made that... He was outselling John Cena in merchandise. And when Rusev Day was happening. That is staggering. That was staggering. And then because he did it on his own, all of a sudden... they're gone to the wayside.
And Braun Strowman, who kind of exploded for no reason. I despised Braun Strowman when he was super hot. You probably remember this.
I do remember this.
I despised him to the point that I'm not even joking. In 2017, whenever he lost a match, I would compile together a video of just him losing with sad music and people crying and put it on my YouTube channel. Just to mess with, just to be an asshole, pretty much.
The monster-fueled rages about the monster among men was that was a time, and Braun now, I mean, pushed to the moon and then just destroyed.
I don't understand.
I don't get it.
They never went with him. He is everything they want.
Yeah. And because they were listening to you, they were watching your stupid-ass YouTube channel of you making fun of him, and then they're like, well, he must be really despised. So then they turned him heel for no reason. Turned him back babyface, and he lost all his momentum, and then he lost to Brock like 400 times.
I will say this is the one person that they absolutely squandered that I do not mind whatsoever.
Yeah, it's another one of those things where they just don't want anybody really getting over on a level unless they make it so, but nobody wants the company champion half the time, and now we're in this weird limbo. It's like, I understand, because Braun, I mean, at the time that Braun was really hot, he wasn't that great.
He really wasn't, and that's why I couldn't stand him.
It wasn't bad, but he just wasn't great, He was
a cartoon, too.
But that was the thing. I thought he was a little too cartoony for my tastes.
The ambulance flip was way too over the top.
Well, yeah, it was one thing to do the ambulance, but then they did like the 16-wheeler, and then they brought in the aerial spaceship that they threw over. And it's like they kind of just gave him too much of the same shtick.
They had him get crushed by a trash compactor where he was trapped in there for at least 2 days. You remember that?
Yeah.
The dude survived a trash compactor and being trapped inside one for days.
I don't understand this company. I don't get this company. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's just, they're just weird. They're just weird how they do that.
Yeah, they are very weird. Now, another thing, speaking of that, another one of my things in wrestling, I prefer them when it's wrestling, so you can only take it so seriously, but I prefer serious storylines.
Agreed.
Stuff like that. Stuff you can sink your teeth into. I hate hokey, comedy, weird nonsense.
And I hate that that's permeated the wrestling world. Like that everybody's doing that now, and now it's accepted because you just need to get with the times, and I think that's the lamest excuse for that.
Like that's why I hesitated with Orange Cassidy, because I thought it was just goofball nonsense nonstop, which you can actually
it is, but
I don't mind it much.
But I mean, you and I talked about it at the Revolution when we were reviewing Revolution, which for the past 3 weeks I've been saying, if you haven't watched it, I don't know why you haven't watched it out there. I've put the link in the description for 3 weeks in a row. Just stop this and go watch that, and then you can come back to this, or finish this and then go. I don't care, but watch it. Watch it, people. I'm putting these out there. I'm not doing it for my health. I'm doing it for yous. Anyway, but no, I totally agree. It's pro wrestling. You know, back in the 80s and 70s, there was no comedy, period. It was people fighting each other and the illusion of people fighting each other. And obviously, I don't mind some things being casual and like, but making a mockery of the business while you're doing it is...
Yeah, I agree. I don't mind, like, comedy when wrestling. When it's good. Like one-liners or something like that. But stuff like Suffer and Succotash is just... Stuff like that.
Well, that was just so forced.
Yeah.
And that's WWE style.
The one thing I hate more than the hokey comedy is, well, what we're getting at WrestleMania this year in the empty arena. We're having AJ Styles versus The Undertaker in a boneyard match. What does that even mean?
I from what I hear, it's supposed to be basically a buried alive match, but they don't want to call it a buried alive match because shareholders, I guess.
Can they find shareholders that aren't such massive pussies, please?
Probably not. I hate to say that, but probably not.
I hate it when they do this C level, not even B movie level, C movie level horror movie nonsense. It's so bad. Like the whole Bray Wyatt Randy Orton feud was nothing but the worst. It was like watching a really, really, really bad horror movie.
What, you mean you didn't like the House of Horrors? What, you mean that you didn't like at WrestleMania having projections of maggots and grubs on the wrestling ring as they just caught their breath until a random RKO finished the match? I don't understand you, Joshua. I don't get it.
or Undertaker burying Paul Bearer in, like, cement.
In oatmeal. Which is what that was. I think I mentioned this on the last podcast. Yeah, that was oatmeal. The
only thing worse than the hokey comedy is the hokey horror movie stuff. It's so bad. I hate it so much.
It's or Kane and May 19th.
Oh no.
Which I was hoping we would actually just talk about when May 19th came along. I'm not even sure that that's even on a Friday. But that was some of the funniest stuff. I can never, like, on May 19th, I can never not hear that.
Yeah.
Thanks to that. But I hear you. It's that's mostly Vince-isms, though.
Yes.
I think that's Vince trying to be, as Corny very eloquently put it, the Walt Disney of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, and he tries to do all this extra hokey stuff, like Ambrose said, or Moxley's like, oh, what do you want me to come out in a gas mask? And then boom, out in a gas mask.
Used a noun.
It's useful, practical. That was just of course, a genius foresight from Vince McMahon. Obviously, he knew this was coming. but
by the way, speaking of Vince, did you hear about the a little bit of controversy with Brody Lee?
I thought that was funny. That's comedy.
Hysterical.
You know, and that's Attitude Era comedy at its best. Is just taking the little pot shots and doing the things like the Vince-isms and the sneezing and the you know.
For everyone that doesn't know, for the Dark Order on AEW, they introduced Brody Lee as I forget his nickname, but
the Exalted One.
The Exalted One. Thank you. They had a segment where he was like eating dinner, and he wanted to finish his meal first, and someone else started eating, so he kicked him out. And then a guy sneezed, and then he kicked that person out. Apparently, those are Vince McMahon pet peeves, and he was mocking them for it. And WWE apparently was so pissed off about it.
And see, here,
I'm just like, good. Who cares?
Yeah, what are they gonna do? Ooh.
Like,
see,
copyright infringement? Like...
And see, here I was thinking that Brody Lee just kicked those two out because Dark Order's full of a bunch of schlubs and the only guy who has any credibility is Brody Lee.
Yeah, that could also be
But that's wishful thinking, I think.
But yeah, exactly. They're all pissed off about it. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
Just complain?
They're going to make Goldberg return. And we're going to have another Goldberg match. And speaking of returns, it's time to play a little game.
Okay.
Da-da, time to play the game! I have to do that vocally because if I tried to use the music, this would be taken down almost immediately. They are literally, they are so sharp with that. You don't understand. The copyright legal team of WWE works around the clock. So anyway, so what we're going to do is I've got a list of returns here that are mostly short runs or somewhat short runs, and I want you to rank them in Meltzer style, even though I have given much critique on Dave Meltzer before.
Okay.
But on a rank of 1 to 5 or 1 star to 5 stars or whatever scale you'd like to use.
Can I do negative stars?
Well, the thing is, yes, you can,
Okay, yeah.
but here's why, because I've got a list of good ones and I've got a list of bad ones. And I'm going to go through them all, and of course I'm going to miss a lot. I'm not including Rumble returns. And the reason I'm not including Rumble returns is that there's really no, like, most of the time they're just one-offs.
Yeah.
But the criteria for these returns is that they had to have come and done a short stint, not come back and been there for 12 years. That's obviously a little different. And it's more than just a moment. We're trying to judge a bit of the run itself.
All right. So,
are you ready, sir?
Yes, I am.
All right, so the first one is The Rock in 2012 in the once-in-a-lifetime build-up and execution with John Cena. You can go as far back as when he came back in the Miz deal. Go.
The beginning of that I wasn't too crazy about because they practically, the main event of WrestleMania 27 is notorious. I don't hate it, it's just not that great.
That whole show was not that great.
I actually kind of like WrestleMania 27 if you ignore the main event and the Michael Cole Jerry Lawler match. Other than that, I love that Del Rio Edge match. I love the Triple H Undertaker match. I loved Randy Orton and CM Punk. I think it's a decent show. It's just with those two matches that really drag it down. But
it almost feels like the good matches are kind of buried underneath the bad matches for that show.
But yeah, it wasn't off to a great start. I mean, the main event of WrestleMania, it ends like that, with The Rock costing Cena the match. That's more like a Monday Night Raw angle or a B pay-per-view angle, not the main event of WrestleMania.
Especially with a very young, and I don't think he was ready for it, Miz.
Yeah, who got concussed in that match, very famously concussed in that match. Then later, they announced the match a year in advance, and Rock barely showed up on TV for months in 2011.
Yep.
Then he came back around Survivor Series, and honestly, I thought that tag match was weird. The tag match they had at Survivor Series was pretty weird.
Is that the one where Truth and Miz were fired afterwards?
They were fired before that.
Oh, they were trying to keep their jobs, right? Wasn't that the whole point of that? I forget the whole dynamic between that.
They attacked a bunch of people at Hell in a Cell 2011, briefly got fired, but got rehired, and they had a match at Survivor Series because in between, they had a match against Triple H and CM Punk at Vengeance.
That's what it was.
But yeah, so Rock came back to team with Cena to take down the Awesome Truth, which is what their team name was. Throwback from 2011.
I miss Heel R-Truth.
Yeah, me too.
I really do. I liked Little Jimmy. That was a fun storyline.
But yeah, so their tag team match, I think it was a decent idea, but it was kind of thrown together out of nowhere. The build to actual WrestleMania 28 after post-Elimination Chamber, because that was the whole John Cena Kane Rise Above Hate nonsense.
Oh yeah.
And the end of Zack Ryder's career.
Oh, poor guy.
Post all of that, from that to WrestleMania and the match itself, that's like the bright spot. So the bright spot of Rock coming back was the WrestleMania 28 match and the build to that match itself.
Yeah.
That was the best part. But then we don't see Rock after the Raw after 2012. We don't see him again until around the Royal Rumble in 2013.
Right, and we're gonna get to that one because that's a separate return.
Yeah.
I'm gonna count that as a separate return. So just for the 2012 scope, what's your rating?
I'm gonna give it a positive 2 stars because it wasn't bad. It was just he was either not there. It was like whenever he wasn't there, what was going around? It was like like he wasn't there for the Rise Above Hate stuff.
Right.
The Rise Above Hate stuff was shit.
Which also was pointless.
I don't know if I can count that or not. I'm just giving it 2 stars. What he did do was all right, and the match itself was good, but it was just surrounded by a bunch of just eh.
Yeah, and what the weirdest thing is the best part of The Rock's return from that whole scope was him indirectly influencing the aggravation of CM Punk, which led to the pipe bomb.
Oh yeah.
Which all in all was a better scope of that was really where the entertainment value was in Rock's return and then leaving and then coming back. And which leads us to our next return, Kevin Nash 2011.
Oh Lord.
Kevin Nash comes out of nowhere for no reason to attack. I guess he texted Triple H from a different phone, and then decided to attack CM Punk. Then never had a match with Punk, and then got upset with Triple H, and it all ended with a sledgehammer on top of a ladder match that Triple H won, and then Kevin Nash left.
Oh Lord.
What do you even make of this?
It's a mess.
Yeah.
There are 3 good things about this entire deal. CM Punk with the epic one-liner of my sister texted me, is that Kevin Nash? WTF? LOL. Thought he was dead. That was funny. That was funny. When he gave Triple H that jackknife powerbomb and almost killed him at Vengeance.
Yeah.
That was brutal. And I actually liked their sledgehammer ladder match. It was ridiculous, but I enjoyed it.
I did too. I did too. That was probably.
Other than that, it was a mess.
It was storyline mess, but I've always thought that Nash and Triple H had quite a chemistry together.
I love their Hell in a Cell match with Mick Foley as the referee.
Yeah, honestly, it was the best. I mean, and then talk about returns, and then they botched that because right after that Hell in a Cell, they had I think it was him and Jericho, and they cut his hair, and then they had the Hell in a Cell with that, and then it disappeared again.
Yeah.
But
this overall, I remember he had a match with Santino Marella on Raw, which was weird.
He did?
How do I remember that? Yeah.
What?
I'll tell you why I remember that, because sometimes I'll watch finishing move compilations, and one of them was Kevin Nash giving Santino a powerbomb in a match on Raw in 2011.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch this now.
It's a squash though. But
still, that is the weirdest matchup I've ever heard.
I know. It's so
why?
bizarre. I guarantee you it was bizarre back then too.
Yes. Well. Yeah.
This whole thing was just weird. I'm gonna give it a half star.
Half a star. I think deservedly so. All right. Up next is Goldberg 2016.
Oh, I'm going to have a controversial opinion on this.
Now, this is a weird one because there was definitely a lot of good in it, but then there was Kevin Owens losing in 28 seconds.
Yeah.
It's I thought the Survivor Series match was so shocking. It was a hell of a moment. And then their match, his and Brock's match in the actual main event, or not the main event, but in the match they had at WrestleMania, was also good at 5 minutes and was the best thing they were able to put together, was better than I thought it'd be. But then there was all this random BS in the middle.
Yeah. I hated everything they did except for the match at WrestleMania 33. I hated the Survivor Series finish. I thought it was ridiculous. After you had Brock Lesnar built up as this unstoppable monster, he's losing the streak.
Yeah.
He loses in less than a minute to Goldberg, who just got back. And
that's a minute 16. He lasted a minute 16.
I still hate that match. I just think it's ridiculous. In retrospect, it made for a semi-decent story because I did enjoy what they did at the Royal Rumble. The Rumble, because it was a Rumble match, so it makes sense.
Right.
That I didn't mind. I wish that they would have just done that or something other than what they did at Survivor Series. Like the 5-on-5 match at that Survivor Series was actually pretty good. And that
it was fun. It was fun.
But I actually when he beat Kevin Owens at Fastlane, part of me enjoyed that because I hated Kevin Owens as Universal Champion because his reign sucked.
His reign was overshadowed by how good Chris Jericho is.
Yeah.
That's no knock to Kevin Owens at all, but it's just it's Chris Jericho.
It's not Kevin's fault. They just booked him. They booked him the same way they booked Seth Rollins during his first world title reign, where he was a massive pussy the whole time.
I will say, though, that the best part about Kevin Owens during that time was him shitting on Renee Young on Raw Talk and talking smack because he was just ruthless. Yes. I mean, it was great, and I didn't really watch those until after they were like long over, but that was some quality hilarity there with just the insults were great, and I wish they let him do that more.
Yeah, I'm going to give Goldberg's return in 2016-17 1 star. It's certainly better than his more recent return.
Yes.
Like, by a landslide.
By a lot. Which started with Goldberg and Undertaker.
By the way, I remember people got mad at me when I said that I didn't want to see Goldberg. In 2017, when the Rumble was happening, everyone was freaking out over Goldberg and Undertaker, and I said that's a bad idea. Everyone got mad at me.
It would have been okay then. But then two years.
I don't agree.
2 years and an Atlantic flight would kibosh any good chances of that happening.
I just thought it was hilarious that when the Taker versus Goldberg finally happened and it was so bad, I was like, this is what you guys asked for. This is what you got mad at me for me saying I didn't want this. You got it, and it was awful.
Now, here's an interesting question, because you mentioned Survivor Series, and you mentioned how that was a because of how well Brock was built, and then to just knock all of that down. Here's my question. What do you do then? I mean, other than not book the match, which would have saved a lot of problems, which, as always, would solve all the problems. But what do you do in that match? How do you book that to where you have a match that, with Goldberg's obvious limitations, and Brock being Brock, how do you make Goldberg return and still make that effective?
I honestly have no idea. I think my biggest problem was that it was the main event of the show.
They should have led with that.
If it was on earlier, I probably wouldn't have hated it so much.
Could you imagine if they opened the show with that? With Goldberg squashing the crap out of Brock Lesnar?
I actually probably would have liked that.
That would have stunned the world more than it already did.
Honestly, if they would have started the show with that, I would not have hated it. I wouldn't have liked them squashing Brock, but them ending the show with that, I hated.
Yeah, it was something. It was definitely something. All right, moving right along. The next one we've got is Hollywood Hulk Hogan from 2002.
Oh boy.
This one, I have to say, this is my favorite Hulk Hogan. Was him coming back and working with all of WWE's talent. I loved his match with Triple H. I loved when he did the internal bleeding angle with Lesnar. His match with McMahon in 2003 was terrific for whatever reason.
Brock looked like $1 million.
Yeah.
And Brock wiping Hogan's blood on his chest.
That's iconic.
I loved it. I have that match on DVD, and I adore that match.
Hogan and Taker the next month was great, which featured one of my favorite lines of all time was The Undertaker threw Hogan into the ring, and someone outside, some fan goes, "You suck," and Undertaker looks back and goes, "Yo, mama sucks," and it's back into the ring. And and his match with Kurt Angle was great. Mm-hmm. It was just like
I love his match with The Rock at WrestleMania 18.
Oh God, yeah, not to mention.
That's probably my favorite Hulk Hogan match.
And listen, I know I love old school Hulk Hogan too. I like the old Hogan. I love NWO Hogan. You know, say what you want about him the person, but his work, his body of work, I have never disliked his body of work. I actually just saw a match of his and Jerry Lawler's in Memphis in 1981. That is ridiculous. Yeah, that's a crazy throwback. And that was before he had, like, Hulkamania had done anything, but he was still a big guy. And Jerry just, like, threw him down. Like, you ever want to see Jerry Lawler body slam Hulk Hogan? It's like a 3-minute cut clip on YouTube. It's worth the watch. Because Jerry's just wicked over with Memphis, because he was always wicked over with Memphis, and Hulk's like laying in a headlock, and people are like ambivalent, they don't care. And then Jerry Lowe's one punch, and the crowd just explodes. But as far as Hogan in 2002 goes, it was really for a guy who was, what, 43 at the time?
He had I remember... My favorite WrestleMania is WrestleMania 19, and he had a shockingly good street fight with Vince McMahon.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I loved that. I loved that. He really, that run, the Hollywood run in WWE was probably his best WWE work.
Yeah, probably.
You know?
I would, out of 4 stars, I'd probably give it a 3.
Yeah, it was really well. I'm glad we finally got a good one in here. Because we've been getting kind of... But okay, and now on the opposite side of that spectrum, The Ultimate Warrior, 1998 WCW. In a match...
Honestly, I didn't really see much of that, but I know about the rematch with Hulk Hogan that was awful, and the weirdness with the what's it called?
The mirror.
I remember it was weird in the weird fireball thing. But I don't really remember much of that.
This was just bad. I mean, they did the Warrior in the mirror, and then Hogan does the freak out. And
oh my God, I do remember that.
And that was and then Bischoff like couldn't see. He was like, "What do you see, Hulk?" And Hulk's like, "God, get him out of here." It was just so cheesy, and like you said, you don't like hokey stuff. It was just so hokey. And then the match was just bad. I mean, Warrior didn't even take his coat off for the first 5 minutes. And the coat was like, if somebody was doing like that splatter art where they just take like a big wide paintbrush and just throw it against a wall, and they just did that and just and we're like, you know what, just wrap the Warrior in that. And they came in, and then they tried to do like this thing where they got a bunch of lighter fluid and poured it all over Ultimate Warrior, and then I don't even think anybody made the save. I think they just ran away. And the Warrior's like, "Oh, what happened?" Like they were gonna try and set him on fire, and then he disappeared. It was awful. It was everything you would hate about pro wrestling. Was the Ultimate Warrior coming back in 1998?
Sounds like overbooked, overproduced, hokey nonsense.
It was nonsense. It was straight nonsense. And Warrior, you know, he was so over in WWE, but God, he was not that good of a worker, was he?
Not really.
No. And it took Hulk Hogan, of all people, to get him to a good match.
You know the first Ultimate Warrior match I ever watched was? When he squashed Triple H at WrestleMania 12. That's such a weird match.
Oh, God. I mean, Triple H obviously bounced back. Because that was at the time when he was getting heat for the curtain call.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but the Warrior came back, and then he tried the bribe McMahon, where he's just like, "I'm not getting paid enough." Then he no-showed the rest of his dates, and that was the end of the Warrior.
Yeah.
And, you know, and obviously, all respect to the Ultimate Warrior and him coming back. I mean, 2014, that was so sweet and then so tragic.
Didn't he die like the day after WrestleMania or the day of?
2 days after he gave the day after he gave a promo. No, hours after he gave a promo on Raw. Where he basically was like, "I've made amends, and now everyone can remember me." He collapsed that night.
That's crazy.
That is like, talk about like having one last demon before he goes to conquer.
Yeah.
That was absolutely insanity. I remember it was just shocking. And he was what, like 54?
Yeah.
Or something like that. But you know what? for as jacked as he was, and he was very obviously on steroids, and I'm not knocking the guy. It was just a different time, but that does things to your heart, man. You know? So let's move on. Let's move on to Bret Hart in 2010.
Oh, no.
I know what you mean.
The build-up was fine.
Everything else was not.
26 is awful. It is awful.
Oh.
I didn't mind the build-up at all to the Vince McMahon Bret Hart match at WrestleMania 26. It was fine.
No, I really liked him coming out and making amends with Shawn, and then Vince coming and kicking him in the dick.
Yeah.
That was great.
And Batista being a hired gun, pretty much.
Yep.
And Bret tricking Vince McMahon into signing the contract for the match by faking his leg injury with that car hit.
Yep.
I enjoyed all of that. The match itself was so bad.
Yeah.
Although, every time I watch that match, which is not very often, there's one spot in that match where Davey Boy Smith and Tyson Kidd do a heart attack. They're on the outside, and Tyson is on the tippy top rope. He decapitates Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
Vince's head bounces off the floor like a basketball.
Yeah, it was cringy.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That is rough.
It really was rough.
And then they go for 3 more days. They wrestle for 20 more hours, it felt like.
Yeah.
And it's just Bret hitting him with a chair over and over and over again, and he can't do anything.
I know.
He can't bump. He can't do anything except swing a chair.
This is former U.S. champion Bret Hart, by the way.
Yeah.
Which is so another part of this fun return. Was getting to be the U.S. champion and then fighting in that 7-on-7 with the Nexus.
Yeah, and getting disqualified because he hit Skip Sheffield or Ryback with a chair.
I see a trend.
What do you think about Bret Hart in 2010? A lot of chairs.
Chairs. Sit down, Bret. Sit down. Yeah. That's what I gotta say about that.
I'm gonna give that one like a star, like 1 star.
1 star.
For the build. The build was fine, but everything after that was just awful.
Yeah, it really was. All right, now I got a couple more here. Let's go with Batista 2014 next. This one's pretty famous because Batista won the Rumble that nobody wanted to see him win. And then he came back, did his thing. He was going to face Orton. Then it became him and Orton and Bryan. Daniel Bryan wins the Unified WWE Championship. Big WrestleMania 30 moment. Then we got Blue-Tista. Then we got his matches with The Shield. And then he quit.
Yeah. This is a weird one, honestly.
Yeah.
When he came back, everyone was happy until he won the Rumble.
Yep.
Then everyone hated him. I remember him one time doing a Batista bomb, but not sitting out with it because he was wearing skinny jeans and he didn't want to rip his skinny jeans, so he just did a regular power bomb.
Because he did rip his skinny jeans on his return.
Yeah. He's a weird dude. I love him.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Although I will say the absolute worst part of his return was his match with Alberto Del Rio at Elimination Chamber.
Yeah.
He wasn't even Blue-Tista or Blue-Tista. He looked like old Tista.
Yeah.
He could do nothing. He was so blown up. He just did his 3 biggest moves, and that was it.
Yeah, well, because I think he was just getting back into the wrestling training. I mean, he hadn't been doing it in, 4 years?
Yeah.
At the time?
He just looked so just out of his element.
Which he bounced back from, because I think his matches with The Shield were great.
Yeah, the match with him, Randy Orton, and Daniel Bryan is a great match at WrestleMania 30.
Yeah, all in all, I think that they made lemonade out of lemons with this one.
Although I still cannot believe that Vince McMahon wanted to go with Batista versus Randy Orton as the main event of WrestleMania 30, and said this would be great. And I'm just like, what is wrong with you?
I can totally imagine that. I mean, it's only gotten better since then.
Yeah.
So what do you got on this one?
I honestly don't know, because like up until the Rumble, it was fine. Then Rumble to Elimination Chamber, it was awful. And then WrestleMania to when he quit, it was actually pretty good. So I'm going to give it 2.5.
All right.
2.5 out of 4.
All right, and now the last one of these is the last one for now. We may do this again with different returns, but this one is going to be 2019 Batista. So the same guy, but coming back just to have the match with Triple H, the pull the nose ring out of my face match, beating the crap out of Ric Flair in the back, couple random promos, and then a very, very long match at WrestleMania.
I actually really liked their match at WrestleMania, not gonna lie.
Me too.
I very much enjoyed the match.
It was long, though.
Yeah, it was very long, and it was with an exhausted crowd.
Yeah.
But I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm also gonna give this one 2.5, mostly because it was a very short program, and it was also kind of weird, and it's also infamous for Batista tripping on his way into the ring, which was just glorious.
On his last match.
Yeah, and I rewatched it on the network a couple weeks ago, and they did not edit out him tripping.
Nope.
I'm just like, oh man.
How can you? How can you? I mean, well, then again, they've been known to do that before, but they weren't going to do that with Titus O'Neil. in what is still probably the best botch in modern WWE.
That's the greatest botch of all time.
That was that was something. So this has been our little our return rankings. And we will have to do this further because there are more names that I've got on this. But we have to move on because it is time for our match of the week. And guess what, folks? I still don't have a name for this or a graphic for this or a song for this. But it's coming. It's coming. So this week, I've decided to... The past couple weeks, for those listeners have been there, you've been hearing me rant about how great the territories were. Well, I figured I'd give you a break from the deep dives. So we're modernizing our match of the week this week. And we went with a match on Monday Night Raw from 2003. It is Triple H versus Kane for the World Heavyweight Championship. And if Kane does not win, he must remove his mask. Initial thoughts?
I did not like this match. It was so messy.
Yeah. It really is.
Triple H screwed up his jumping over the ropes off an Irish whip.
Yep.
Then they screwed up a DDT.
Yep.
Then they screwed up a neck breaker.
Yep.
And I'm just like, what is happening?
This was not their best.
They were on completely. And then Kane messed up a big boot on the referee. Everyone was in different books, like in different universes in this match.
I don't think Triple H and Kane ever really had a good chemistry together. I mean, Katie Vick.
I was thinking the same thing.
Katie Vick. That should say enough.
Yeah.
This
match was a mess.
This match really was a mess. And Lillian didn't care. Lillian's like, oh, there's the World Heavyweight Champion, Triple H. Oh, there's Kane over there, right? Go, let's do it. But they had no in-ring intros for the World Heavyweight Championship, and I am okay with that.
Yeah, and they practically had no contact throughout the match because they kept missing each other.
I was so weird. Boy, does Triple H love that steel step spot, though.
It wasn't awful, but it was very clunky.
He does that in every match, though.
Yeah, he does.
He loves pushing those steel steps off its hinges and making it look like he got hit.
John Cena loves that too.
And you know one of my favorite parts in this was Flair, because they throw, they're fighting outside of the ring, right? And Triple H is gonna hit Kane with I think a chair. And as Triple H is hitting him with a chair, he hits him with a chair, and then the ring, Flair is arguing with the referee, and Flair just takes a bump for no reason.
I saw that.
I thought that was fun. I was like, Flair is going to bump at any chance he can.
Yeah. And what made that even funnier was, because you know how WWE is about chair shots to the head, or even showing chair shots.
Yeah.
The video you sent me, when Triple H does the chair shot to the head.
They blacked it out.
They freeze frame. Well, it blacked out because he accidentally hit the cameraman. But it did a freeze frame, then a blackout, then the next thing you see is Rick taking a bump.
Yeah.
So it's just those three things back to back to back, and I'm just rolling in laughter.
No, Ric Flair, as usual, is the funniest part of the match because Flair just knows exactly where to be to make sure that your eye just darts to him at exactly the right moment.
And I will say one notable thing about this match is it's one of the first RKOs ever in this match.
Yep.
And it's not a very good looking one.
Nope. Nope, it was not.
So freaking clunky. Oh my god.
Everything was. This was just like where nobody was on the mark. You know, I kind of thought when that chair shot happened, even if he had to do it from like the top of the head, wouldn't it have made him the whole moment better if Kane had gotten some juice? It would have made it would have made the unveil. I know he's wearing a mask, but at the same time, like you could have worked around that though. I mean, because he probably get the camera off. He kind of pulls the mask. I mean, he lost his mask in Saudi Arabia for Christ's sakes. You could have just dipped it over, bladed yourself, pulled it back up, and used, and that'd have been. And then when you took the mask off later and you had all the blood, that would have reignited the blood, and the blood coming down your face would have made you at least look a little more demonic.
You mean to tell me the little smudge on his face when he took the mask off wasn't scary enough for you?
No, I don't think the ashes from JR's barbecue made that look any better. No.
He took his mask off. He had a little bit of hair and a smudge on his face. Didn't look that scary at all. Meanwhile, the commentators are acting as if he has leprosy.
What the hell is that? It's Kane.
Oh my god! It's like, guys, relax. He has a smudge. Like, get a napkin and wipe it off.
The one thing that did look good in this was Kane's scoop slam power slam.
Yes, that did look good.
That was probably the only thing that looked good in this, except for like Kane's elbows in the corner. I always liked when he did that. When he'd get trips in the corner, he'd just hit him with the back elbows a little bit, because those always looked really like they was bringing him in and laying him in pretty hard. And then the match fitted. The crowd warms up to this match somehow, and then the match is over. Triple H has won. They've screwed. And then Bischoff comes out in like a discount bowling shirt. What the hell was Bischoff wearing? It was like brown and black, like he had just like gotten a bowling shirt and had just gotten dumped on by a horse. It's just like I don't understand I was just confused.
Dude, it's hilarious to me that like SmackDown in 2003 was like freaking awesome, but Raw in 2003 was an absolute cluster screw.
Raw was very much represented by Eric Bischoff's brown and black bowling shirt.
Yeah.
That was Raw in 2003, was Bischoff's bowling shirt.
Yeah.
And it's funny because then they finish the match, but then they go get the heat back on Kane. Does Orton and Flair and Triple H, like almost like they forgot that they needed to get heat on him. And then comes Van Dam, which thankfully this was at a time where you didn't need entrance music to make a run in if you cared about somebody.
Yeah.
And then Van Dam botches his move. He botches the over the leg spinning heel kick.
Can I tell you how happy I am that you chose this match, Sean?
I didn't realize until reviewing it.
Match, ladies and gentlemen.
I didn't realize until reviewing it how messy it really was.
Oh my god! That neck breaker that Triple H.
That was bad.
Absolute worst.
That was real, but Triple H was like reaching back behind him like 6 times, like get the fuck over here.
Anything, like one strand of his hair.
Yep.
And it yanked him down somehow.
Yep.
And then he sat up, and the commentators were like, that neck breaker wasn't effective at all. And I was like,
yeah, no shit.
One strand of his hair.
Oh god, too funny. This match was something, and then it took forever for Kane to finally unmask.
Well, you have to do a build up to the smudge.
And then he did a choke slam that just got over like a popcorn fart because they were actually behind Kane. It didn't feel like a heel turn, even though he was acting a bit heelish in the match. And then he did the fire, and then everyone was just kind of like, "What was this?"
Speaking of that, sure, Triple H had people interfering, but the referee took a bump, sort of, even though Kane missed the big boot by like 3 football fields. So then he grabs the world title belt, hits Triple H in the face with it. He's the babyface, mind you. And then they do the dramatic covering the person with no referee. Then a referee slides in, makes the count, and he kicks out. That's a babyface spot. But they gave it to Triple H, who was the heel in the match.
I think, I wrote that down too, because I'm looking at my notes, and I said it felt out of place. But it was until I changed my mind once he threw the referee out of the ring. Because
I walked back my statement when I said this match wasn't bad. This is a bad match. I changed my mind. This is a terrible.
This match was rough, but I will allow Kane hitting the belt on Triple H as a almost reversal spot because he did throw he threw the new ref out. Did Kane in frustration, which was kind of teasing heel. And I think it was, if you look at it from he was teasing turning heel, then I will allow it. But at the time, it just felt out of place.
I mean, yeah, but the kick out spot that's a babyface thing, Triple H did that, which was weird. So,
yeah, and nobody wanted to cheer Triple H.
This match was a cluster screw.
Yeah, it really was. It was. You don't have to sugarcoat it. It was a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
It really was. Because I'm not getting monetized for this. You already said the C word on it. So.
Yeah, you're welcome, buddy.
Yeah. So this is why, when he said last time he was here, why did I agree to do this? Why did I agree to have him on again is a good question.
We're not known for our life decisions.
No, we're really not, are we?
Dude, I'm gulping down monsters at an alarming rate as we speak.
So this match was something, and maybe the next time you're on, I'll give you a match actually halfway decent. But this was something I thought was better in my head, and then upon revision, it was clearly not.
Me too. I thought when I was thinking back, I was like, that match isn't that bad. I mean, it's all right match because I haven't seen that match in years.
No, me either. That's why I chose it.
It was an all right match from what I remember, and then I'm watching and I'm like, it is not.
Nah, it really isn't. Does not age well. And
that's
so
neck breaker.
Yeah, that neck breaker. That neck breaker and that bowling shirt, man. That was.
And the DDT where Kane jumps too early.
Ugh.
Oh God.
Oh God. I think everybody involved had better nights than that night.
Yeah.
And with that said, we got one more thing we got to talk about, and that is our superstar spotlight. Mm-hmm. And I advertised this last week, and now this week we're going to talk about it because I feel bad for the guy. Because he was going to have his huge moment, and now he's going to have laxatives in church as his crowning moment. That is the one, the only, the Glasgow, I forget what he calls himself. Drew McIntyre.
The Scottish Psychopath.
That's it. That's the one. Drew.
I remember that.
Drew McIntyre, when he first came onto the scene in 2010, I could not care less about this dude.
He's a very handsome man, though.
He was a handsome man, but he was definitely not all there. He was like, his promo skills were just bad. His matches were just meh. I mean, he was green. He was just green in all fronts. And I think he was a guy who had a great look, who got pushed before his time with a gimmick that he couldn't possibly live up to the expectations of.
Yeah.
Although
I will say that his early feud with John Morrison I did enjoy, because they had a match at TLC that's actually a really good match for the Intercontinental title. But that's mostly because he's in there with John Morrison.
Yeah, and Morrison at that point had been, 7 years in with
2009, 2010, John Morrison is very underrated.
I honestly thought that Morrison was going to end up with a run with the belt at that time, because it looked like they were kind of pushing him to that level. With his feud with Jericho that he had, which turned him babyface, and then he had the match with Hardy that we've already reviewed on the show. Mm-hmm. He had a lot. He had a lot of good tools to his disposal. And then 3MB.
Oh, God. Poor Drew.
But
poor everyone. Honestly, I don't hate Heath Slater, but that gimmick was perfect for Heath Slater. I don't know what that says, but
I feel bad for all three of those guys, because I think all three of them were destined for better things, and they all got held back with that gimmick.
It makes me feel so bad, because I remember Jinder Mahal talking about how depressed he was with that gimmick.
I don't blame him.
Me either.
I don't blame him at all. Oh, your gimmick is you play air guitar with two other guys who play air guitar. How cool are you? Oh God, it was rough.
Yeah.
It was just rough. And then Drew leaves in what shocked a lot of people, but then started destroying the indie scene as Drew Galloway.
Oh yeah, he completely reinvented himself.
And
Got jacked, and then started murdering people, and then all of a sudden, people like Drew Galloway again.
his matches with Kurt Angle were tremendous. I think that was in TNA, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean Galloway had quite a lot of matches that in that time. I remember watching an ICW. I forget what it's called. I think it's Insane Championship Wrestling. It is out of Scotland.
Yeah,
and
I think that is what it's called.
And it's Drew's hometown. It's basically Drew's bread and butter. But seeing him there, and I mean the crowd was rabid for him. I mean absolutely rabid for him. It was great. It was great. And then he comes back as an NXT run. And his NXT run was absolutely fantastic.
I agree.
And you know,
although I will say, as much as I love the Claymore kick, I miss the Future Shock DDT as his finishing move. Because say what you want about his first run, he had a hell of a finishing move.
Yeah, he did. And it looked powerful and it looked effective, and it was powerful and effective. I like the Claymore too.
I love both of them, but I just miss the Future Shock.
Yeah. I remember, though, I think it was... Who did he lose the title to? Almas? Andrade?
Yeah, because I remember Almas did a top rope hammerlock DDT, and it messed up Drew's shoulder.
Yeah. I was not a big... I think that match was probably my least favorite of his run, though. Because it was just clunky. Clunky as an NXT match can get, which is, you know... But
they weren't doing neck breakers with one strand of someone's hair, but still.
No, yeah, obviously, that's apples and brown bowling shirt oranges, but then he goes back to the main roster. I was really concerned for him when he got to the main roster again.
Me too.
Because it's the main roster.
Oh yeah.
And but then he had that feud with Reigns that just would not end.
Yeah.
It would not end. Like most feuds with Reigns, it would not end. and I don't think he won that either. Did he?
No, he lost at Mania, and then he lost at Stomping Grounds, the greatest name for a pay-per-view ever.
And then he joined Dolph Ziggler and Shane McMahon?
No, I think it was Strowman.
Strowman, right, as they were burying Strowman in the process.
Yes.
And then they did that whole deal, and then Drew was Drew part of that thing with Bobby Lashley and Elias and Shane? Was he involved in that?
I think so.
Who remembers?
He honestly just floated around a bunch of random stuff.
Yeah.
In like 2018, 2019.
Yeah, and then finally the big moment, which has gotten me. I get goosebumps thinking about this moment still because of how well booked the Royal Rumble 2020 was.
I have replayed his Claymore kick on Brock Lesnar an unhealthy amount of times.
It's gorgeous.
It looks perfect. The pop is perfect.
Yeah.
Booker T losing his freaking mind on commentary is perfect. It is so good.
And then the dead stare. The dead stare just the whole time. And then he starts eliminating 3 or 4 people, and he's still just looking at Brock the whole time. Oh, it was great. And then him winning the thing at the end of it. And the pop he got for that, which was tremendous.
And then this.
And this is out of his control, too. I just feel so bad for the guy.
Yeah, me too.
It's like...
Honestly, I'm starting to think, what if because of this whole thing they decide not to pull the trigger on him yet?
I don't think they will. I think Brock's winning. I don't think... They can't do this to him. They cannot do this to him.
Yeah, I think Brock's going to win, too. I think they're going to hold off on... Like, either they're going to hold off on Drew, or that was it.
Yeah, which would be even worse.
Yeah.
You know, because he's just so talented. But I don't think that's the case. I think they still have got plans for Drew. It's just they, with the circumstances being what they are, and just like the amount of time he's waiting, and there's not a guy more deserving on that roster to finally win that belt than he is.
I agree. I mean, like, what I would do if it were me, I would hold off on it now, and once this whole situation clears up, try it again next year.
I'm thinking SummerSlam, or not SummerSlam, I'm WrestleMania 37.
Yeah.
I say wait the whole year on it, and honestly, get him some other wins, you know?
Yeah.
Or, you know, it'd be really fun. Give Jinder Mahal the world title and have him feud with Mahal for a little while.
John.
And make Heath Slater a referee, because Heath Slater has done referee stuff
We're
before.
not doing a 3MB reunion show, okay?
This isn't a reunion. This is a fight. They're fighting over who gets the best air guitar. Who gets the biggest, longest, fattest air guitar that has 2 6-strings on it. Oh, and I guess the WWE title, too.
Yeah. Because all of them get like 3 WWE title belts, all of them playing their air guitar on the title belts all at the same time.
Please, we're gonna be giving McMahon too many ideas.
We're using too many nouns, John.
That's I know. we're gonna see all this show up on Raw next week. We're gonna be like, what did we do?
What have we done?
But that's what we do. Like you said it yourself. We are not known for good decisions.
No, we are not.
So and with that said, thank you so much, Josh, again, for being on the show. This will not be the last time you're on here. I guarantee it.
Unless my monsters give me a heart attack, which they very likely will. But I will not stop drinking them because they taste good.
Exactly. So while you're stabilizing your blood pressure, we have to take our first commercial break. And when we get back, we are going to have a new Superstar Spotlight, a new match of the week. I'm going to rant about a bunch of other random stuff like usual. And until that time, please enjoy these messages from our sponsors. We'll be right back.